Yo, what's up guys, Alpha, and today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth deck breakdown of a deck that I've recently used to hit rank 5 with on the Arena ladder. As you can see from the Arena Pro Tracker screenshot here, I'm currently 22-3 with this deck, so it's been performing really well for me. And now before I get into it, there's going to be an MTG zone link down in the description. If you click on that, it'll have the full deck list there that you can import into Arena if you want to try the deck out for yourself. And I'm also in the process of writing a full text article about this deck for MTG Zone Premium that will have more details, a full sideboard guide, how I changed the deck for best of one, and some tips and tricks to help you play the deck as well. So as soon as that's finished and up, I'll link that down in the description as well. But anyway, with that all out of the way, this is my Mardu Crucias Humans deck in Historic. Now, Humans has obviously been around in Historic for quite a while now. It's basically an aggro deck with nice disruptive elements, and typically it's either been mono white or Selesnya splashing green for Collector's Company, but I'm a really big fan of going into Mardu to enable you to play one of these new cards, Crucias Titan of the Wave. So if you're not familiar with this card, came out in the latest Alchemy set, and it's a 3-mana 3/3. At the beginning of your end step, you may discard a card. If you do, you create a treasure token, and you choose Ambitious or Expedient. If you choose Ambitious, you seek a card with greater mana value than the discarded card. If you choose Expedient, you seek a card with lesser mana value than the discarded card. So, the reasons why I'm really high on this, first of all, it's a human, so it plays in with all of your other human synergies, which is really nice, obviously. But it also helps to fix one of the biggest issues that I've had with humans in the past, and that is that it's very much an early game deck without much card selection or card draw. So, you try and commit to the board early, and if the opponent manages to stabilize against you, you're basically just left at the mercy at the top of your deck, which means that you don't really have good ways to grind into the mid to late game at all. And the card selection that Crucias gives you really helps you grind into the mid to late game, because you can, use it to pitch any dead lands that you draw, to find threats. You can pitch cheaper cards that you draw to find more expensive, more powerful threats. And additionally, since Inquisitor Captain is the only card in the deck that costs 4 or more, you can discard a 3-drop to guarantee finding Inquisitor Captain, which is so powerful because Captain is the best top end card in the deck. So Crucias basically manages to turn humans from an early game deck into a deck that can really grind into the mid to late game if you have it. On top of that, it also enables your very fast aggressive starts as well, because if you play Crucias on turn 3, not only do you get to immediately fix your hand, but it also produces a treasure token, and then on turn 4 you have access to 5 mana, which enables you to play like one of your 3-drops into a Thalia's Lieutenant, or maybe like an Inquisitor Captain into a Ranger Captain, tutoring a 1-drop, and then you can also play the 1-drop because of the treasures. So Crucias not only basically turns a deck that was previously just an early game deck into a deck that can grind into the mid to late game, but it also helps to enable those fast starts if you have it on turn 3 as well. So I'm really, really high on this card. Being in Mardu colours also enables you to play some really nice Orzhov options as well. Juggernaut Peddler, for example, is a card that's really overperformed for me. So this is a 2-mana 2/2 with Vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, you basically replace the opponent's best non-land card in their hand with a Juggernaut. And this is so powerful because, first of all, it enables you to get rid of your opponent's removal, if they have single target removal, or especially board sweepers, which can be an issue post-sideboard, because Brotherhood's End is a very popular sideboard card right now. Getting Juggernaut Peddler down and getting rid of your opponent's removal clears the way for you to be able to attack, makes it very hard for the opponent to stabilize against you. Very, very good against combo decks as well, obviously, against Goblin Charbelcher. Getting rid of the Charbelcher basically just wins you the game in a lot of scenarios. And even outside of that, you can also use this to get rid of your opponent's proactive threats. So, for example, if you're up against Rakdos Midrange deck, you can use this to get rid of Fable of the Mirror Breaker or Seasoned Pyromancer or Crucias to slow down the opponent's proactive game plan. And the fact that it's 2 mana as well is very important against control, because it enables you to go underneath Archmage's Charm, even if you're going second, which was previously a big issue with cards like Elite Spellbinder as well. And the fact it permanently gets rid of the card as opposed to just taxing it is really powerful as well, especially against sweepers against a deck like Control. Now, obviously, the downside of Juggernaut Peddler is they do get the Juggernaut, but Juggernaut is a horrendously bad card in Historic, and the only time it's even really a stumbling block for you as an aggro deck is if the opponent plays it on turn 4, and if they don't have anything better to play on turn 4 other than the Juggernaut, you're usually in a really good spot anyway. And even if they do play it on turn 4, the only downside of that is that for one turn, you can't attack with creatures that have power 3 or less. And after that, since they're forced to attack with the Juggernaut every single turn, they're not even going to have it back on defense anymore. So Juggernaut isn't an issue at all, and getting rid of the opponent's best card is such a big advantage, particularly in this sort of deck when you're trying to get rid of the opponent's removal to be able to attack. And we also get extra access to General Kudro, which is another really powerful card. Gives all of your humans +1/+1, which is really what we want to be doing in a go wide aggro deck. And it also gives you main deck Graveyard Hate, which is really nice. And obviously it's very good against the more graveyard heavy decks like Is It Phoenix or Kethis combo, but just getting some Graveyard Hate is very good against decks like Rakdos Midrange, getting rid of Seasoned Pyromancer and Croxer and stuff like that. And a lot of decks do have small graveyard synergies as well, like Blue-White Control is going to be running Memory Deluge a lot of the time as well, so main deck Graveyard Hate is very nice, and you also get access to this removal ability as well, enabling you to kill creatures with power 4 or greater, which is really nice at killing creatures like Shieldred or, Auras creatures once they start loading them up with Auras. So General Kudro does a lot in the deck and is a great addition. Not many humans decks were running black before, and Kudro is a great reason to be in Mardu colours in the first place. And then the other cards in the deck, we'll start off at the 1-drop slot. Esper Sentinel, just one of the best cards in the deck. So good against a lot of the format right now. Like, obviously very, very good against control, but there are also a lot of spell-based decks that rely on their early spells to be able to set up. Decks like, is it Wizards? Is it Phoenix? The Auras decks, and this is also just the best card against red-black midrange as well, because Rakdos midrange basically relies on going 1-for-1 to be able to pull ahead, and if you get an Esper Sentinel down on turn 1, that either slows them down or produces you card advantage, both of which are really bad for you. And we have a ton of ways to boost the power of Esper Sentinel with stuff like Thalia's Lieutenant and General Kudro as well, so this is definitely one of the best Esper Sentinel decks, and Esper Sentinel is one of the best cards in the format, I think. Then the other 1-drops, we're only running singletons because of Ranger Captain, so might as well look at Ranger Captain while we're talking about it. 3 mana 3/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with mana value 1 or less, and you can also sacrifice it to basically give, as a silence effect to stop your opponents casting non-creature spells this turn. So that's the reason why we're running kind of like a toolbox of 1-drops in addition to Sentinel. You want to run 4 Sentinel just because it's one of the best cards in the deck, but the other 1-drops we've got, Dauntless Bodyguard is a human that protects one of our other creatures, which is really nice, if it's a matchup where we want to protect Thalia, if Thalia is very impactful, we can protect Thalia. Oftentimes you're going to end up with a really big Thalia's Lieutenant, so protecting that is really nice. General Kudro is another card that you want to protect, as is Crucias as well, and Recruitment Officer can run away with the game. So we have a lot of really impactful targets that we can protect with the Dauntless Bodyguard. So if you're worried about creature removal, if you're against Rakdos midrange and Crucias is basically running away with the game, you can fetch a Dauntless Bodyguard to protect the Crucias. If you're against a deck that's running Brotherhood's End and you want to protect like a Thalia, for example, you can protect it with Bodyguard. So Bodyguard giving protection against decks that have a lot of destruction-based removal is very nice. Then we've got a single copy of Giant Killer, which is basically removal for big creatures, and this is really, really important, particularly against a creature like Shieldred or against Auras, being able to kill their core Spirit Dancer once it gets big, and then you can play it as a creature to tap down the opponent's creatures as well, so very nice to have access to off the Ranger Captain. And we've got a single copy of Hopeful Initiate, so this is just a generically powerful card to be playing on turn 1, but as a tutorable card, it enables you to kill artifacts or enchantments, which is really big. Now, obviously, normally you have to get the training online to be able to activate this, but because we have 4 Thalia's Lieutenant, which can put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on stuff, we can often just tutor this up off the Ranger Captain and then just play it immediately and activate it the same turn if we already have counters on stuff from Thalia's Lieutenant. So Hopeful Initiate, basically a tutorable way to kill artifacts or enchantments, which is really nice. And then Recruitment Officer is basically your generic card to search if you're kind of at parity with the opponent and you need to pull ahead. So if you're against Rakdos midrange, for example, getting this is really powerful because you can just keep pumping mana into it and getting additional creatures every turn to just pull you ahead on card advantage. Typically in the past, this slot would have been dedicated to something like Thraben Inspector, but the fact that you can repeatedly activate Recruitment Officer makes it much more powerful in these sort of grindy games where card advantage really matters. Then at 2-drop slot, we've got 4 copies of Thalia, so this is another really big reason to be playing humans. You're running basically an all-creature deck in the main deck anyway, so this doesn't affect you negatively in any way, and is really, really powerful against a deck like Blue-White Control. Now, obviously, Control isn't the most popular deck in the format right now, but it's also really strong against, decks that rely on spells as well, like, is it Wizards, Auras, is it Phoenix, for example, and most decks in the format are running spells anyway. Rakdos midrange, all of their interaction is spell-based for the most part. Now, I guess while I'm talking about Thalia, it's important to talk about Skyclave Apparition. So this is basically the only interaction that we're running in the deck outside of, like, Kudro and Giant Killer. And I think 2 copies of Apparition is important to be able to kill, threats like Reflection of Kiki-Jiki that can snowball the game if you aren't able to kill them. And just, having access to some amount of removal in the main deck is important. I didn't want to go more than 2 copies in the main deck because I want the main deck to be very linear and very proactive, so you're basically just racing game 1 no matter what you're up against, which means that, no matter what you queue up against, you have a very strong proactive game plan. The issue with running more than 2 Skyclave Apparition in the main deck is that you can end up with draws, particularly against a deck like Control, where you have multiple apparitions, and it slows down your ability to kill the opponent. Additionally, if you're up against a deck like Rakdos midrange, and they don't have much to commit to the board, apparitions can just kind of sit in your hand and slow down your proactive game plan. So for that reason, I didn't really want to be running more than 2, but there are decks in the format where you do kind of need interaction to be able to race them. Like, Auras, for example, can be difficult to race. As you know, Is It Wizards and Is It Phoenix can be difficult as well. And Thalia really helps out in those matchups to slow the opponent down. You know, that's one of the reasons why I'm running for Thalia, even though Control isn't that popular, so that we can still race Auras, Is It Phoenix, and Is It Wizards without needing to run a ton of interaction, if that makes sense. So that's why I'm running for Thalia. There are obviously matchups where we board it out, but I really like having 4 in the main deck for that reason. You know, it's a proactive card that slows down a lot of the other fast decks in the format. And we've also got 4 copies of Thalia's Lieutenant. You know, this is a card that just commits so much power to the battlefield really quickly and then grows itself a lot. So Thalia's Lieutenant, one of the biggest payoffs for being in humans and just one of the most powerful cards in the deck in general. Already gone over Ranger Captain. Then the last card in the deck is Inquisitor Captain. So this is just our top end card. This is basically our version of Collector's Company in the humans deck. And, you know, just enables us to commit to the board very quickly. Obviously works very, very nicely with Crucias because we can consistently tutor up the Inquisitor Captain by discarding a 3-drop. And because we have such a high creature count, you know, we've got 36 creatures in the deck, so we never really have to worry about Inquisitor Captain not hitting because we have such a high creature count. So we can have a really big board, tutor up Inquisitor Captain, and it will still hit for the rest of the game as well. Then in terms of the mana base, 24 lands has felt like a good amount. You know, you want to be hitting your 3rd land drop on curve in basically every game because casting a Crucias on curve is really important, casting a Ranger Captain on curve is really important. And then, you know, in terms of the lands themselves, the reason that we're able to splash for Crucias fairly easily is because we have Secluded Courtyard and Unclaimed Territory, which are, you know, basically work to be able to cast every card in the deck. Now, the downside of running Skyclave Apparition is that it's a spirit and not a human. The only human alternative is Brutal Cathar, which I think is just a pretty bad card in general. You know, giving the opponent back the card when it dies is so much worse than Apparition, so I definitely think Apparition is worth running. The one thing you do need to be wary of with these cards is that there will be some draws where you have, you know, as Secluded Courtyard and Unclaimed Territory as your main lands, and in those situations you might have to name Spirit for one of the lands to enable you to cast the Apparition, but that shouldn't really happen because we do, or it shouldn't really happen that often because we do have a bunch of other white lands as well, and because we have the fast lands available in Orzhov and Boros colours, we can very easily run a mana base where we can cast every single card in the deck because every land produces white mana for all of our humans, and we have enough red and black sources to be able to cast Juggernaut Peddler on turn 2 and Crucias on turn 3 without it really interfering. You know, the only thing you really lose is utility lands. Now, obviously, if you're in mono white, you do have access to stuff like Mutavault and Iganjo and stuff like that, which is obviously nice, but I think the benefits of having access to Crucias to basically make your deck have a much better mid to late game, and having access to Juggernaut, Peddler and Kudro is definitely worth going into the Mardu colours. So that's the main deck. I've been so impressed with it. I think Crucias giving you a really strong mid to late game is such a big addition to a deck that was kind of otherwise just an early game deck. I think Juggernaut Peddler is a card that's really overperformed for me, and Kudro is a great reason to be in black as well. So I've been really happy with how the main deck works. It's very linear. You know, we do have some interaction in the form of Apparition, but for the most part you're able to race a lot of the decks in the format. And then onto the sideboard, we've got 3 pieces of Graveyard Hate. So we've got 1 Tormod's Crypt, 2 Soul Guide Lantern. So first of all, the reason why I've got 3 pieces of Graveyard Hate is because I feel like the graveyard decks can be difficult to race. You know, particularly something like Greasefang is hard for you to race if you don't have a decent amount of Graveyard Hate. You know, Is It Phoenix and Kethis combo can also be problems if you don't have a lot of Graveyard Hate as well. And obviously we do have Kudro in the main deck, which does act as Graveyard Hate as well, but oftentimes that's going to be too slow against a deck like Greasefang. And the other thing is, you know, even though we do have a lot of Graveyard Hate, we can pitch any additional copies that we draw with Crucias, and Soul Guide Lantern can cycle itself away as well. Now, the reason that I've gone for these cards over other alternatives like Unlicensed Hearse or Rest in Peace is mainly because you don't want to be breaking up your curve too much to play Graveyard Hate. You know, the real advantage of having something like Tormod's Crypt is that it doesn't break up our aggressive curve because we can just cast it for 0 mana. You know, we can play a 1-drop on turn 1 and a Tormod's Crypt, then a 2-drop, then a 3-drop. If you're running stuff like Rest in Peace or Unlicensed Hearse, you have to take a spot off on your curve to cast the Graveyard Hate, which slows down your aggressive game plan. The reason why I'm not running more Tormod's Crypt because of that is because it does have diminishing returns drawing it in multiples. You know, the advantage of Soul Guide Lantern, even though it's one of the more expensive, is that you can cycle it away. So I've been really liking this. Now, there is a chance that, you know, I could potentially see going down one of these Graveyard Hates if another deck needs more cards in the sideboard, but right now, you know, Is It Phoenix is still a deck Greasefang is still a deck, and I still come across random other graveyard combo decks as well. So I've been liking 3 of these because I feel like one of the big weaknesses of a very creature-heavy deck that doesn't have too much interaction with spells in the graveyard is you are kind of vulnerable to stuff like Greasefang if people are running Mythic's Masteries decks as well. So I do like running the 3 copies of Graveyard Hate for that reason. Then we've got 4 copies of Portable Hull, so 4 copies might seem like a lot. Previous versions of Humans have typically run, 2 or 3, but I really like running 4 copies of Portable Hull for 3 particular matchups. So first of all, is it Wizards can be a difficult matchup because they can, if we have Esper Sentinel Thalia, that's very difficult for them to beat, but we're not always going to have that. And if we don't, then it's very easy for the Is It Wizards opponent to just, play an early creature and then start using their burn spells to kill our creatures, which slows us down a lot. And they can race very, very quickly. So having Portable Hull, or having 4 Portable Hull, really maximizes our chances of killing their early creatures, which slows them down a lot. The second matchup is Mono Green Devotion. Devotion can be a very difficult deck to beat. Particularly game 1, I think Devotion is very unfavored for us because their game plan, they basically just go way over the top of us. We're basically two ships passing in the night in that matchup. And so post-sideboard, we really want to maximise our chances of being able to kill their Llanowar Elves or Elvish Mystic on turn 1, because that matchup is a pure race, and if you're able to kill their turn 1 Elf, that slows them down so much. So maximising your chances of drawing an answer to their turn 1 Elf is really important in that matchup. And then additionally against Auras, Portable Hull is really, really important as well. That's another matchup where Esper Sentinel and Thalia is really good at slowing them down. But again, you're not always going to have that. So having 4 copies of Portable Hull really maximises your chances of killing their early creatures to stop them snowballing the game. Additionally, Hushbringer is very, very strong against you, which is a card they're definitely going to be bringing in. So having Portable Hull as a way to kill that then enables you to kill their other creatures with stuff like Skyclave Apparition, which is really important. And additionally, the Affinity and Thopters decks are still about, and Portable Hull is really effective against them. Retrofitter Foundry is a very, very powerful card against you because, them getting down an early 4/4 stops you being able to attack in the early game. So Portable Hull also gives you good ways to kill their early stuff against the artifact-based decks as well. So I've been a really big fan of 4 Portable Hull for those reasons. Then we've got 4 copies of Brave the Elements. So this is another card that is here for very particular matchups. And this is here mainly for other decks that are basically just trying to race you. That aren't that interactive. So stuff like Mono Green Devotion, stuff like Mono Red Goblins or Rakdos Goblins, stuff like Mono Green Elves as well, where basically, they can commit to the board faster than you to the point where you're not able to attack anymore. So, against Mono Green Devotion, for example, even if you're able to kill their early elves with the Portable Hull, they can still just get down like an Old Growth Troll and then, get into a Cavalier of Thorns. And even though they don't kill you back particularly quickly, they can set up a huge board to stop you being able to attack. And having Brave the Elements be able to give your creatures protection and just attack through for lethal basically enables you to steal those games in matchups that are otherwise difficult. Similar kind of story against Goblins. They can often just build up a really wide board of Goblins, which stops you attacking. You can just Brave the Elements, give your creatures protection from red, and attack for lethal. Same thing against Elves as well. They're another deck that can commit to the board very wide, and it's very difficult to attack past. So Brave the Elements basically enables you to steal those sorts of matchups as well. So Brave the Elements, very, very important at enabling you to beat other decks that are just trying to commit to the board quickly and can be difficult to attack round. Then we've got copies 3 and 4 of Skyclave Apparition for the matchups, but that's important. So mainly against creature decks, but also very important against the artifact decks, being able to kill stuff like Nettlecyst as well. So basically any matchup where we want additional creature removal, Apparition is really good. And then we've got 2 copies of Wedding Announcement. So this is mainly here for blue-white control, first of all. Very simple sideboarding against control. We basically just cut the 2 Apparitions and bring in the Wedding Announcement. And it's also very nice against Rakdos Midrange as well. It produces 3 tokens. All the tokens are humans, so we get bonuses off the Thalia's Lieutenant and Ranger Captain and Kudro as well. And then you get an Anthem effect as well. So really nice card that enables you to grind against both control and Rakdos Midrange as well. While I'm talking about the sideboard, I do want to go over some other options that are more narrow, but definitely worth bearing in mind in different meta games, because I have tried a bunch of different cards, and I do think there are some very nice options in Humans. So if the meta game shifts and certain decks become more popular, then these options are worth bearing in mind. So first of these is Knight of Dusk's Shadow. So the life gain decks can be very difficult matchups for Humans, particularly decks like Helioke and Angels. Now, I have found those matchups to be definitely winnable because of Portable Hull and Skyclave Apparition, but Knight of Dusk's Shadow is a real silver bullet that really helps to improve those matchups. It's a human, and it just stops the opponent gaining life, so it basically shuts off their whole game plan. So if you expect to face a lot of Angels and Helioke, Knight of Dusk's Shadow is definitely a consideration. Another card that I ran in this sideboard for quite a while is Loran of the Third Path. So this is basically another human that is very good against the affinity decks, and also, you know, if Enchantress suddenly becomes popular, it's good against enchantments as well. But this is just basically a white Reclamation Sage that is a human as well. So if you felt like you wanted to improve the affinity or Thopters matchup, this is another great option there, in addition to Portable Hole and Skyclave Apparition. And then the last card that I tested for a little while that I was quite impressed with is Tomic. So again, you know, like I said, Mono Green Devotion is very difficult game one. Post sideboard, when we have Portable Hole to kill their early elves and Brave the Elements to be able to attack through, is pretty good. But Tomic basically stops them targeting their Nykthos with Kiora. It stops them targeting their lands with Wolfwillow Haven, stops them animating their lands with Nissa, and is just, you know, a decently sized body for a 2-mana human. It has flying as well, which makes it more difficult for them to block. So if you expect a lot of Mono Green Devotion, then Tomic is potentially a good option as well. But as things stand, I feel like the really nice thing about this sideboard is a lot of the cards pull double duty in multiple matchups, so I didn't want to go too narrow because there are a lot of viable decks in Historic right now, and I think that this setup covers the bases the most. But like I said, if you expect a particular deck to be more important, then those options are worth bearing in mind as well. I just quickly edited in something that I forgot to say in the main video. So in the gameplay I've got coming up, the first 2 matches that I've got were experimenting with a slightly different sideboard. I think I was running Loran of the Third Path, Knight of Dusk Shadow, and Elite Spellbinder in place of Brave the Elements and Wedding Announcement. And this sideboard I've got here is definitely the definitive one that I would recommend playing. I think Brave the Elements is super important against Devotion and Elves. You don't really have good ways to win in those sorts of matchups otherwise. And I think Wedding Announcement is just generally better than Elite Spellbinder because it's good against Rakdos Midrange as well. So this is definitely the sideboard that I would run. And having tested it a lot, this is definitely the best configuration I've found. So anyway, back to the video. But anyway, that's the deck. I've been really impressed with it. I think the addition of Crucias is so nice. You know, I think this is probably one of the best cards that's been adding to Historic recently, and I think it does a lot of work in humans to enable you to grind into the mid to late game better. Like I said, Juggernaut Peddler's been really nice, and we have a ton of great options in the sideboard for humans as well. So I felt like every matchup is winnable with this deck, and you have such a strong proactive game plan as well. And next up, I've just got some matches so that you can see the deck in action. I've got 5 matches that I was playing with it in the ladder. If you've got any questions about the deck at all, definitely let me know in the comments, and I hope you enjoy the gameplay. Big up. Okay, sweet, here we go. Okay, so we're going second here. And yeah, this hand's sick. So we've got Sentinel on 1, into Thalia, into Ranger Captain, into Inquisitor Captain potentially, which is a really strong curve out. Okay, opponent leads on Inquisition, so yeah, take the Esper Sentinel, so that makes sense. You know, potentially we're against Rakdos Midrange, and Sentinel is like the best card against them on turn 1. Hopefully they don't have another discard spell, because it would be a bit rough losing Thalia here as well. They do. Okay, so that's a bit unfortunate. By the way, I played Inspiring Vantage on turn 1 there, just because we are running quite a lot of fast lands, and if we drew another 2, we would have got punished for playing the shock land there. So Giant Killer off the top's interesting. We could have played it out as a creature, but I think in this matchup, since we're against Rakdos Midrange, I think it's important to save Giant Killer for Shieldred, because we don't have that many answers to it main deck otherwise. Okay, so opponent plays Fable. Interesting. So I was going to slam the Ranger Captain, but I think I'm going to go for Juggernaut Peddler now, because there are a number of cards we want to be able to take before they play them, like Shieldred. Okay, Fable, I'm pretty happy to take that. Now, the obvious downside is they do get the loot off Fable now, so they can just cycle away the Juggernaut, but had they had a Shieldred or a Seasoned Pyromancer in hand, I would rather have taken it with the Peddler before they get a chance to play it, even though they get to loot the Juggernaut away there. So we'll see what else they've got here. Okay, they attack with the 2-2. Even though Juggernaut Peddler has Vigilance, I'm definitely going to make the trade here, because I don't want them to get any more treasures off that 2-2 if possible. See what else they've got. Okay, they do have the Shieldred, so going to kill that before we draw, just so we don't take any extra damage. So I'm very glad we held on to the Giant Killer there. And now we can just play the Giant Killer as a creature. I'm very glad I drew the Skyclave Apparition as well, because, you know, this is one of the main reasons I've got Apparition in the main deck, because Reflection can just run away with the game if we don't kill her, especially if they get something like a Bloodtithe Harvester or a Seasoned Pyromancer alongside it. Okay, so they Liliana, I assume they minus. Oh, they plus. Interesting. So I think we're going to discard the Ranger Captain here. I want to have the Skyclave to be able to kill Reflection, and we obviously want Inquisitor Captain as the top end card. And they have Thoughtseize. Interesting to see what they take here. Probably the Inquisitor Captain if they don't have anything else in hand, yeah. So we'll Skyclave the Reflection. You know, like I said, if they start copying Bloodtithe or Seasoned Pyromancer, they can just pull ahead. They're going to play the lands so that they don't force us to discard off the Liliana, and then we can just Attack the Liliana for 1, see what they draw off the top. Fable, that's pretty good for them. They're going to minus with the Liliana here. Yeah, so even though Giant Killer is useful, we don't want to give them a 3-3 if we can avoid it. Okay, Thalia's not a bad top deck. Well, it's not great, but not awful. So we'll play the Thalia out. Not going to attack this turn. If they don't play another creature here, we can potentially attack the Liliana with both of our creatures next turn, which could potentially kill it. We'll see what they do. Okay, they just play a land, perfect, and then they plus. I assume they don't attack into Thalia here. Oh, okay, Kudro's a nice draw here. I still think we're going to attack Liliana with both creatures. We don't want them to be able to get another minus off it. Going to get rid of the Shieldred so they can't get it back off Takenuma later in the game. And then we can attack Liliana with both. Yeah, they block the Skyclave Apparition, which makes sense. They do get a 3-3 and Reflection. Oh, Fable's going to flip to Reflection next turn, which again, can be an issue if they get to copy Bloodtide Harvester or Seasoned Pyromancer. So hopefully we draw well off the top. This is the kind of spot where I'd love to have a Crucias. Oh, wow. Okay, that's a very good top deck for the opponent because they can, basically get the Shieldred back. Get the Croxer back straight away because of the treasure that they have. I mean, thankfully, Kudro can kill the Croxer with its ability, but we need another human in order to do that, and we'd have to sacrifice 2 humans in order to do that as well, which is kind of rough. So we're pretty far behind now because of that top deck. Croxer is going to be difficult. Now, we could sacrifice the Kudro and the Thalia to kill Croxer, but we might as well wait and see what we draw here. We did draw the Crucias. Okay. I mean, that's pretty sick, but we don't have any cards in hand, unfortunately. And I was hoping there that I could potentially play the Crucias, kill the Croxer with the Kudro trigger on the stack to then immediately exile the Croxer, but I think you have to target immediately when the creature enters the battlefield, so you don't have an opportunity to do that. Oh no. Seasoned Pyromancer is literally the best top deck for the opponent in this spot, because they can draw 2 and then just copy it. Had we been able to cast the Crucias, hold the Kudro trigger on the stack, kill the Croxer in response, and then exile the Croxer with Kudro, we could have had a chance this game, but Kudro needs a target immediately, so I think... Honestly, I can't think of anything that could get us back in the game here, unless we draw Inquisitor Captain into Skyclave Apparition or something. So we can double block the Croxer here, but I feel like we just fall too far behind if we do that. But I don't know. I don't think we've got much better option. We could just block with the Thalia and hope to draw Inquisitor Captain into Apparition, but then we can only deal with Reflection or Croxer, and they can immediately copy the Pyromancer, so I think we just have to deal with Croxer here, unfortunately, and just hope to draw well. Crucias isn't going to do that much when we have nothing in hand, unfortunately. If we had it earlier in the game, it would have been sick. So now Croxer does go to the graveyard, which means any human off the top and we can exile it, but they do get to copy Seasoned Pyromancer here. Yeah, we drew a land, okay. So that's too bad. Pyromancer and Croxer were 2 of the best cards they could have drawn there, so opponent did get a bit luckier than us in that situation anyway. I'm going to bring in an extra Apparition and probably trim a Thalia. Thalia is not as good on the draw, and even though it is good in this matchup, I don't think we want all 4 copies. And, like you saw there, Reflection does tend to run away with the game if we don't deal with it. So I think having Apparition as a way to deal with that is important. Additionally, they've got Shielded as well, and Apparition is a great answer to that as well. But overall, I felt like this matchup... it's quite even, but we have a lot of good tools to pull ahead. If we can get Crucias down early, particularly, that's a really good way to pull ahead. All we've got to try and do is just make sure that Reflection doesn't get to untap if possible, and, try and stop them getting too much value off Seasoned Pyromancer, because Pyromancer from their side is a very good way for them to stabilize against our early aggression because of the tokens, but, especially with Crucias and... being able to go Ranger Captain, get Recruitment Officer, we do have a lot of ways to pull ahead. Okay, this hand's great. Turn 1 Sentinel is the best start against them. Unfortunately, we don't have black mana for Kudro, but even if we don't draw black lands, we have, we can go Sentinel on 1, Hope for the Shot on 2, then Ranger Captain on 3, which is pretty good. So, Sentinel's hopefully going to do a good job of slowing the opponent down here. Definitely going to play the Vantage over the Sacred Foundry, even though we could play the Sacred Foundry tapped, because we are running 7 fast lands, so the chances of us drawing the 3rd on curve aren't that unlikely. Okay, they thought it sees us, so I assume they take the Ranger Captain here, because we can't actually cast the Kudro. Oh wow, they take the Kudro. Okay, that's obviously good for us, so we actually have a good turn 3 play to go for now. So what do we want to take here? I mean, I think it's between Recruitment Officer and Bodyguard. I think since we're light on resources, I'm just going to go for the Recruitment Officer here. Because that is a way that we can just pull ahead on card advantage. It is very good in this matchup if it doesn't get killed straight away. And I think we are light enough on resources that I want to go for it here. So we'll see what the opponent has here. We've still got Sentinel in play, which, means they're probably unlikely to cast Fable on curve. They go for the Throat Ranger Captain, which is fine. Like, in a way, I'm kind of happy about that because it means that Sentinel's still in play. Now, Recruitment Officer here, sometimes against Rakdos, I do want to hold on to it, so that we can play it and activate it in the same turn. But I think we want to make at least decent use of our mana here. And I was going to say I'm holding on to the Giant Killer in case they have Shieldred. So very glad I did that. We can kill the Shieldred immediately here and then see what we draw. Okay, nice. Kudro is a good draw here. We get the training on the Hopeful Initiate, which is another way that we could potentially kill Reflection, which is nice. And then there is some consideration to holding on to the land here, so we don't just get hit by Croxer or Colligan's command. And if we draw Crucias, we have a good card to discard. But with Recruitment Officer and Giant Killer and Hopeful Initiate all having activated abilities, I think I just want to get lands in play here so that we can activate stuff. So I'm going to slam the Kudro here. We could wait until they block with the Pyromancer and then exile it, but I think boosting our whole board is more important. Going to exile the Shieldred so they can't get it back with Takenuma. Then we can tap down the Seasoned Pyromancer here so that it can't block with the Killer and then just attack in. And I think... Still not sure if I want to play this land or not. We'll attack in first and see what the opponent does here. Okay, they push the Sentinel, gives us a free card, which is great. Okay, opponent just blocks one of them, and then I think we'll play the Courtyard, hold on to this other land in case we draw Crucius. We couldn't play both lands anyway, but I think there's some merit to holding on to lands here. Although having said that, we do want to activate Recruitment Officer and be able to play what we draw off it as well, so we'll see what we draw here. Okay, so I'm going to lead on activating the Recruitment Officer just to see what we hit. Okay, Crucius is sick. So now we can play a land and play the Crucius, although maybe we want to attack first, because if they block with the Pyromancer, we can exile it with the Kudro trigger. So I think I don't want to lose the Recruitment Officer. If I attack with the Giant Killer, they can just double block with both Pyromancers here. So I think I'm just going to attack with the Initiate. They can double block with the Pyromancers, but I think I'm alright with that. Okay, so they don't block with any of the Pyromancers, that's fine. Going to use Crucius to exile the Chandra again for Takenuma. If they were running Arcanist, then we would start exiling spells, but I don't think they are. And then we can start getting value of Crucius here, so this should definitely help us start pulling ahead. Getting Apparition is really nice. Okay, they have a Crucius of their own. Probably just going to hit that with the Apparition. See what they discard here. Okay, they discard another Crucius, they go for Ambitious, so that makes me think they probably got Shieldred. Gonna lead on activating the Recruitment Officer here, although we have seen Chandra, so it doesn't, they're not just running 4-drops. Okay, Thalia's Lieutenant's a really good hit here. Just get to boost the power of our whole board. Okay, yeah, opponent just scoops it up. So yeah, Recruitment Officer and Crucius just completely pulled us ahead there. So going into game 3, even though we're on the play, I mean, since they're running stuff like Chandra, I think I'm going to go for the 4th Apparition here. And trim on the Thalia again slightly. Thalia was decent, but I think I just want a bit more interaction from the build that they're playing. Okay, I think we can keep this for sure. Like, Juggernaut Peddler is very good against Rakdos because it can hit all of their 3-drops. Well, obviously it can hit removal, so if they've brought in Brotherhood's End against us, it's going to be really good. Typically, we don't really want to be mulliganing that much against Rakdos anyway because of all the discard spells. Okay, they just hit the Peddler anyway. That does leave us kind of at the mercy at the top of our deck, but we have a lot of time to draw something good, so... Okay, they have Inquisition. Get rid of the Kudro. Wow, they kept a 1-lander though. I mean, that's obviously great for us. I mean, we are kind of flooding out a little bit, and typically, if you're screwed, like mana screwed, that's usually able to beat Flood, but we'll see how it plays out here. Okay, perfect. That's literally the perfect card. Crucius is the best card if you're flooded out, because you can start turning these lands into something better. So we can pitch the Godless Shrine. Okay, Esper Sentinel's not the best. I mean, I guess it's still quite early and the opponent is kind of missing lands, so Esper Sentinel is definitely not the worst. Okay, opponent's still missing lands, and Ranger Captain's a great draw off the top. So we'll play the Ranger Captain here, and I think we'll shoot the Recruitment Officer again. And then we can play the Sentinel and the Recruitment Officer. Although, oh, okay, opponent just scoops it up, sure. Nice, we got there. Okay, so we're going second here. And yeah, this looks good. You know, we've got Recruitment Officer on 1, Lieutenant on 2. As long as we keep hitting lands, which, you know, we're on the draw, so we're more likely to. Getting Crucias down on 3 is really, really good as well. So yeah, this hand looks pretty decent. See what the opponent's on here. Okay, Supply Buff Canal Pass. So makes me think probably is it Wizards or is it Phoenix? You know, there's no Gigantha, so might not be Wizards, but not all the Wizards this run Gigantha. Okay, Unholy Heat, so that makes me definitely more towards Phoenix, because not many of the Wizards this run Unholy Heat. But we'll see what else they play. So if it is against Phoenix, then this is definitely a matchup where Esper Sentinel and Thalia will pull a lot of weight. We also have a decent amount of graveyard hate, so post-sideboard I definitely think this should be pretty favoured for us. So opponents in the tank here, do they maybe keep a one-lander potentially? If they did, you know, you can only really keep a one-lander on Phoenix if you have, like, at least Ops, Consider, or, like, at the very least Dragon's Rage Channeler. So I imagine if they did keep a one-lander, they probably have one of those. Unless they just disconnected, maybe. Okay, yeah, maybe they did just disconnect for a second. Okay, so opponent plays a Pathway. Bit annoying we didn't hit our third land. We're just going to run out the Lieutenant here. See if the opponent has like another piece of interaction. So yeah, if we miss our third land drop, then obviously that would suck. You know, especially being on the draw as well. But yeah, hopefully we won't. We are running 24 lands, so I think it's, you know, pretty likely that we'll hit our third land on curve. And to be honest, the deck can operate somewhat on 2 lands, but obviously not with this hand. Storming Entity. That's not a card I've seen in a while. So that is pretty annoying, actually, because basically all of the interaction that we're running, apart from Giant Killer and maybe Kudro, can't kill it. Oh, wow. Not only did we miss our third land, but we drew another uncastable spell as well. You know, like I said, we can operate on 2 lands some of the time because we do have a decent number of 1 and 2 drops in the deck. But, you know, if you draw all of your 3 and 4 drops and no lands, then obviously you're going to fall pretty far behind. But yeah, Storming Entity is kind of annoying because we can't hit it with Skyclave Apparition. We can only hit it with Giant Killer if they buff it, which they will a lot of the time. And we can also kill it with Kudro as well. So, but yeah, Storming Entity isn't a card I've seen in a while. But to be honest, I think we can race it in most situations. This is just, you know, hopefully not going to... Oh, wow, missed the land again. But yeah, this game is just going to come down to me missing land drops, I think. But post-sideboard, even though they're running Storming Entity, which is harder to kill than most of the other creatures that they run, because we're relying on Apparition as the main piece of interaction post-sideboard, I think we should still be pretty good because, like I said, Esper Sentinel and Thalia are both great in this matchup. Kudro's great as Graveyard Hate. We've also got Crypt and Lantern, so even though we're probably going to lose this one to missing lands, I think we should be pretty good post-sideboard. Okay, we'll see if they got looting into Phoenix into like a third spell, then I think I'll just concede straight away. Okay, there's the Phoenix. Do they have the third spell? And Ox as well. Okay, they got Supply Buff Canal, so at least they didn't bring back the Phoenixes. Okay, there's a land, so we're not completely dead yet. We can play the Kudro to exile the Phoenix, but I think, you know, it's too late. I think we're probably just so far behind now. I mean, we've still got like an outside chance, so I'm not going to concede just yet, but you know, they can get in for some amount of damage with the entity and then probably just kill us next turn. Okay, they play Skyclave out. They play Expressive Iteration. It'd be interesting to see if they pay the 2 for Sentinel or not. They choose not to. I guess that makes sense because, you know, we're so far behind that giving us extra cards at this point probably won't matter too much. You know, obviously it'll get us closer to the 4th land, which will help us, but from their point of view, it's probably just beneficial for them to buff the Storming Entity so that we're dead on board next turn. But yeah, we'll see what they hit. You know, there's still a chance. I mean, I guess, yeah, this is an issue where Skyclave Apparition can't kill the entity, because normally, you know, if that was like a Crackling Drake or a Sprite Dragon, we could go Inquisitor Captain if we draw a land, and then potentially hit Skyclave Apparition, which could give us an out, but obviously since Storming Entity's 5 mana, we can't do that. Okay, they Unholy Heat the Sentinel. And they're only 1 card type away from Delirium as well, so there's a pretty good chance that this Dragon's Rage Chandler is going to start attacking for 3 next turn as well. Wow, okay, they have an extra entity. Yeah, that's just game. So that was unfortunate. You know, had we hit our 3rd land on curve, I think we'd have actually had a really good chance in that game, but that's going to happen some amount of the time. So we definitely want the Graveyard Hate here. Definitely want the Tormod's Crypt and the Soul Guide Lanterns, and don't think we want the Juggernaut Peddler. That's going to be pretty low impact here. I think we do want the additional apparitions, even though we did see Storming Entity. You know, there's a chance they're running Sprite Dragon. You know, we want apparition to be able to kill Chandler as well. And if they're running stuff like Crackling Drake, we want to be able to kill it as well. So, again, Ox of Agonis is another card that apparition can't hit, but I assume they're probably running some other creatures outside of Storming Entity, and apparition should be able to hit all of them. I'm not going to go for the 4th apparition just yet. If we see more stuff like Sprite Dragon or Crackling Drake, then I definitely think I'd be interested in bringing the 4th apparition in post sideboard. But especially on the play here, I don't want to run too many reactive cards, because Phoenix can play pretty well as a control, or in the control role, especially if they have hands with like Brotherhood's End or, you know, sweepers in general. So you don't want to overload too much on Skyclave Apparitions, because you can just end up in spots where you have too much interaction and you aren't able to race. But like I said, as long as we actually hit our lands, I think we're pretty favoured post-sideboard here, because Esper Sentinel Thali is so good. We have 4 copies of each. We have Graveyard Hate in the form of Tormod's Crypt, Soul Guide Lantern, and Kudro, and we have a pretty fast clock. They are generally reliant on damage-based removal, you know, stuff like Brotherhood's End as sweepers, and we can boost our creatures to 4 toughness or higher fairly easily. You know, we've got a lot of 3 toughness creatures that we can buff with Thalia's Lieutenant, for example. And if we can set boards up like that, it's very difficult for them to break up, even if they do happen to have a Brotherhood's End or something like that. But yeah, I think I will need to keep an eye on the exact creatures that they're running, because normally if they weren't running Storming Entity, if they were running just a regular creature suite of, you know, Sprite Dragon, or not even necessarily Sprite Dragon, I guess the main one's Ledger Shredder, but if they are running a lot of other creatures, then I definitely want to bring the 4th apparition in post sideboard, I think. Okay, Tormod's Crypt Sentinel is like one of the best turn 1s against Phoenix, and will hopefully help us keep drawing lands. Now again, it's a little bit awkward that we don't have anything proactive until 4 mana, but you know, we've got a lot of draw steps before we get to that point anyway. So I'm also going to lead on the Godless Shrine, you know, shocking it in rather than the Unclaimed Territory, because with Skyclave Apparition here, there's a chance that we might have to play the Unclaimed Territory naming Spirit to be able to cast that on turn 3. So I'd rather shock in the Godless Shrine just to see what lands we'll draw beforehand, so that we don't cut ourselves off casting Skyclave Apparition. Or additionally, you know, I don't want to name Spirit sorry, I don't want to name Spirit and then Spirit now and then not be able to cast Humans later in the game. So opponents considering their mulligan. I still think, you know, we've got a pretty sick hand here. Assuming we keep hitting land drops, we should be fine. And Esper Sentinel definitely should help us with that as well. Definitely going to play the Tormod's Crypt now as well, you know, just in case they have Spell Pierce or something. I mean, Spell Pierce with Sentinel in play will be pretty good for us anyway, but I'd rather get the Tormod's Crypt in play now while we can. Okay, opponent just plays the Steam Vents tapped. So here, I mean, this is kind of risky, but I think I'm going to name Human. There are, you know, the only way we get punished for this is if we draw exactly an Unclaimed Territory or Courtyard. And considering the vast majority of the lands in our deck also produce white, I think that's probably fine. And, you know, there's a chance if we draw more spirits that we might... if we draw more humans, we might want to cast multiple spells on a turn. And having Unclaimed Territory on Spirit can be annoying for that. So here, we definitely want to keep hitting land drops. So I'm just going to cycle away the Lantern because we already have the Tormod's Crypt in play. Okay, perfect. We hit another land, and it's a plane, so we can play the Apparition. So just going to get rid of this Sprite Dragon before it gets out of hand. Now, typically you do want to play Thalia as early as possible, especially in a matchup like this, but I think Sprite Dragon, is a card that can get out of control very quickly, so I think, the priority is getting rid of that. Plus, it's slightly more mana efficient as well. Yeah, we're using all of our lands here, so I think I do prefer playing the Apparition there just to slow the opponent down, and then probably play Thalia next turn. I mean, it'd be interesting if we draw a 4th land drop, because there are a lot of good hits off Inquisitor Captain. We could potentially hit another Thalia off the Inquisitor Captain. But if we don't draw our 4th land, I think we definitely want to prioritise getting Thalia in here. Even if we do draw a 4th land, I think there is an argument to getting Thalia into play anyway, because it is just a card that gets much better the earlier you play it. Having said that, I do think, we would have to be very mana inefficient to do that. So I think I'm going to go for the Inquisitor Captain. And I'm going to do it pre-combat just in case we hit a Lieutenant here. Okay, Kudro's a nice one. So now we have Graveyard Hate online, kind of. Well, I mean, we've got the Tormod Crypt and the General Kudro. That buffs the Esper Sentinel to 2 power. Now, I'm not going to attack with the Esper Sentinel because they could have a removal spell for the Apparition, which would then enable them to get a blocker for the Esper Sentinel. And I feel like Sentinel's doing quite a lot of work here. Yeah, so they abrade the Kudro and we get to draw because of the Esper Sentinel. I mean, having said that, maybe it was better to attack with the Sentinel because we would rather them use a removal spell on the Apparition than the Kudro, but they could very well... Yeah, I'm not really sure there, to be honest. I think not attacking with the Sentinel is probably good because it is a very, very annoying card for them to have to play around, particularly at 2 power off the Kudro. So I think overall I'm pretty happy not attacking with it there because, had they had 2 removal spells, if they go Abrade the Kudro, Unholy Heat the Apparition, that's a complete blowout for us. So overall I think I'm pretty happy with that play. So we'll see what else the opponent has here. Wow, Anger of the Gods. I mean, I'm surprised not to see Brotherhood's End, but I guess it essentially does the same thing here. The only difference is it exiles, so that means that we're slightly more likely to brick on the Inquisitor Captain, which is a little bit annoying. So again, we could go straight for the Captain here, but I feel like especially now they have access to 4 mana, I want to get the Thalia in play here just to stop them having big turns. Last turn, I kind of like going the Inquisitor Captain because we have other creatures in play, so hitting something like a Kudro or a Thalia's Lieutenant has pretty big impact. Whereas here, since we have an empty board, and it's quite a critical point in the game, I want to slow the opponent down as much as possible here because they could very well have, three spells into Faithless Looting Phoenix, and Thalia just shuts that off. And then we can go Inquisitor Captain this turn. Plus, I guess there's more of a risk playing Thalia when we have a full board as well because we get more blown out by stuff like Anger of the Gods or Brotherhood's End, whereas now, when we have an empty board, if they do have a sweeper, it's, a lot more, or it's a lot less enticing for them to play a sweeper just to kill one Thalia, if you get what I mean. So they do play Storming Entity here, which is a little bit annoying, but, if we can find a way to buff the Thalia, whether that's a Lieutenant or another Kudro, we can start attacking. So I definitely think we're just going to stand the Inquisitor Captain next turn. Obviously, they haven't got good attacks because the first strike on Thalia... Okay, Ranger Captain is interesting. I still think I'm going to stand the Inquisitor Captain here, though, just because if we can hit a boosting effect... Okay, sweet. We got another Kudro, and that's really good because we can start exiling stuff from their graveyard now. So I think we'll take out Anger of the Gods just because, we want to try and take them off Delirium. They have 2 instants, 2 sorceries, so... I think I'm going to go after the sorceries because they generally run fewer of them. And I think, they could potentially be running Finale of Promise, and having Anger of the Gods available in the graveyard as a thing to flash back is kind of more problematic than anything else they got going on there. Okay, so Expressive Iteration, but it's costing them 3 mana here, so even if they have a way to get Phoenix into the graveyard, they don't have enough mana to cast 3 spells because of the Thalia, which is the real strength of it in this matchup. By the way, the end of last turn, I'm not 100% sure if playing the Sacred Foundry was correct there, to be honest. I think I probably should have held on to it. I don't know. I was going to say just in case we draw Crucias, but if we do draw Crucias, we already have the Ranger Captain to get a 1-drop that we could discard, so... I think I'm going to go after the Abrade here, just because, again, it's the slightly better target for Finale of Promise. And then, could go for Giant Killer here as a way to kill the Storming Entity. Could go for Bodyguard to protect our stuff from board sweepers. Sentinel's not bad. Recruitment Officer's also not bad, but I think it's mainly between Giant Killer and Bodyguard here. I think I'm going to go for the Bodyguard, though, because, you know, being able to protect both Kudro and Thalia seem pretty important here. I think I'm going to protect the Thalia here, just because if the opponent does have an Anger of the Gods effect or something like that, having a Thalia on board is going to, you know, slow them down a lot. You know, whether that's their ability to buff the Storming Entity or the Sprite Dragon because they can't cast spells as easily, or whether it's down to, what's it saying? Down to, sorry, I was just thinking for a second there. Definitely going to protect the Thalia here. I mean, that is maybe problematic because they could have a sweeper now, but we do have the Ranger Captain to sack. But yeah, I was just saying, if we keep Thalia around, it makes it very unlikely that they'll be able to bring back Phoenix. It also makes it very unlikely for them to buff the Sprite Dragon as much. Now, I was thinking about cracking the Ranger Captain, but if they have a board sweeper here, it kind of resets their board as well. So, yeah, thinking about it, that attack last turn might have been a bit greedy to go attacking with the Thalia. I mean, obviously it increases our clock slightly, and it gets rid of the Storm Entity, which I'm pretty happy about. So, to be honest, I'm pretty happy. You know, the trade there was essentially Dauntless Bodyguard for Storming Entity, which I think is a fine trade. Now, it does obviously make us vulnerable to a board sweeper. We could have played around that with the Ranger Captain's sacrifice, but I think overall I'm pretty happy with how that went. I mean, obviously it's good for us they didn't have a board sweeper, but okay, second Thalia is interesting. I mean, I think we've got pretty good attacks here overall. Now, they could, you know, they have got mana for a 1-mana spell, but I think I'm happy to attack with everything here. They do have Consider, which does buff the Sprite Dragon to a 3/3. And they could potentially get Delirium online here, but we've already got the Tormod's Crypt, so we can shut that off at instant speed. So, you know, even though they can block the Kudro, they can, like, double block the Thalia potentially. I think that overall they don't really have great blocks here, even if they get Delirium online, because we can shut it off fairly easily. Okay, they do hit lands, they do have Delirium now. But yeah, either way, I don't think the opponent really has great blocks for here. You know, they can block Kudro with the Sprite Dragon. I mean, they're blocking... I don't know, maybe they don't... Maybe they forgot about the Tormod's Crypt. Maybe they want us to crack it so that they can go off the Phoenix next turn. Or maybe they are pretty far behind, so maybe they're thinking that their only real route to win this is to block and hope we forget about Tormod's Crypt, which is pretty reasonable. You know, sometimes you've got to hope that the opponent doesn't see something, and that's your best chance of winning. So yeah, I mean, opponent just gets completely blown out here, and I think we can afford to just sack the Ranger Captain during their upkeep here. You know, the only way they can punish this is if they have, like, you know, multiple creatures. If they have, like, just 2 creatures in hand or something. I mean, the only counter argument to this is that Thalia's already making their instants and sorceries not great anyway, so there's a chance that sacking there could be kind of greedy, especially... Oh, okay. So they do have Ox of Agonis. I'm really hoping they don't draw into any more creatures here. I mean, currently they're dead on board. Maybe sacking the Ranger Captain there was a little bit greedy. Okay, thankfully they don't have another creature. Going to play the Sentinel. Oh, wow. I can just... So Arena's giving away they don't have anything here because it's just giving away priority. Going to get rid of the lands to keep them further away from Delirium. And yeah, if they don't have anything here, we should just win. Still not 100% sure if sacking the Ranger Captain there was right or not. There's a lot of hands they could have where they could potentially string together 3 spells. Okay, they just scoop it up. But yeah, if we didn't sack the Ranger Captain there, they have enough mana to cast 3 spells. They could be getting back Phoenixes and stuff. So on balance, I think it was probably right to sack the Ranger Captain, but I think it's close. Okay, so we did see Crackling Drake and Sprite Dragon, so I think we're going to bring Apparition, and what should we cut instead? I mean, Recruitment Officer is probably just too slow for this matchup, so I think we can cut that, although now we do have a lot of 3-drops. The curve is quite a lot higher, so I think there's an argument to potentially trimming on something like a Ranger Captain instead, but we do have some additional 1-drops because we've boarded in the Soul Guide Lantern, so it's not like we're not going to have much to do on the first few turns because we have stuff like Soul Guide Lantern that we can play on turn 1, but yeah, this can definitely be a tricky matchup. You know, what order you want to play stuff in, how early you want to get Thalia into play, when you should be sacking the Ranger Captain, because Ranger Captain is another really useful tool in this matchup to be able to stop the opponent getting back Phoenixes, or looks like opponent's pretty heavy on Sprite Dragon, Storming Entity sort of stuff, and shutting them off playing instants and sorceries during their main phase really slows down their ability to grow those sorts of creatures as well. So we have a lot of really good tools for this matchup, and I definitely think it's favoured overall, even though we lost game 1, but that was just mainly down to missing lands more than anything else. But yeah, I mean, opponent's particular builds, I think Storming Entity is particularly good against us since we're reliant on Skyclave Apparition. I guess, Fatal Push is also the other main interaction in the format, and it dodges that as well, but I just think it's, I've never been a big fan of Storming Entity and Phoenix unless you're running something like Strike It Rich, which enables you to get it down on turn 2, which is, less consistent but high risk, high reward. Because the big issue with Storming Entity is, the ideal turn you want to be playing it is on turn 3, and that kind of conflicts with Phoenix, right? You also want to be trying to set up bringing back Phoenix on turn 3 off Faithless Looting. And so unlike Sprite Dragon or Ledger Shredder, where you can play that on turn 2 into a potential turn 3 Phoenix turn, Storming Entity kind of forces you to slow your Phoenix turn down by an extra turn, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, obviously back when Brainstorm was legal, Storming Entity was pretty sick there as well, because you could just put back 2 cards and scry them to the bottom. But yeah, it's interesting to see. I mean, it is obviously good against us because of Skyclave Apparition, but I'm not sure I prefer it over something like Ledger Shredder or Sprite Dragon personally. So this hand, we don't have anything amazing. It's always a bit awkward having Giant Killer and Ranger Captain in the same hand, because oftentimes you want to use the Ranger Captain to find the Giant Killer. It feels like it's kind of wasting a slot in your hand, but I think we still have to keep this. We do have a reasonable curve out here. Even though we don't have a 2-drop, I don't really want to be playing Giant Killer as a creature, because it is one of the only ways we have of killing the Storming Entity. Definitely going to lead on the fast lands. Generally you want to play the fast lands earlier, because 7 is quite a lot, and you can be, you can mess yourself up if you play your shock lands and then top deck the fast lands. Okay, Thalia's the perfect draw. That's really great to play on turn 2. That's going to slow down their development with Sprite Dragon quite a lot. And if they don't kill it, we get to train the Hopeful Initiate as well. Okay, so opponent plays Dragon's Rage Channeler, and no removal spell for the Lieutenant is really good to see here. So I think I'm going to lead on attacking first. Almost always right to play Crucias on turn 3, just because it starts snowballing the game a lot. So going to attack first, buff the Hopeful Initiate, and then just get Crucias down on turn 3 here. But yeah, drawing that Thalia was very clutch. And then I think I'm just going to pitch the Ranger Captain and go Greater, and then that guarantees an Inquisitor Captain for next turn, which is really nice. Wanted to keep the Giant Killer as a way to kill their bigger creatures. Thalia's Lieutenant is obviously very powerful, and I don't want to ditch my 4th land as well. So I think Ranger Captain is probably the card to pick there, especially because we already have Giant Killer. There's potentially an argument to saving the Ranger Captain to tutor the Giant Killer if we didn't already have it, but we already have it, so we could go for the Inquisitor Captain here, but I think I like going for Lieutenant, just to put the Crucias out of range of his Sweeper, and the Hopeful Initiate as well. Now they're up to 4/5, so their only real way back into the game at that point was a Sweeper, I think. And now with the Thalia's Lieutenant, we've kind of put that out of range. I think generally the Concealed Courtyard is more useful than Sacred Foundry, because the only thing we're using red mana for is Crucias, which we already have in play. So then we can use the Crucias to tutor up an Apparition, which is pretty sick. So yeah, their only real out at that point was a Sweeper. The only Sweepers they run tend to deal 3 damage, and Lieutenant over Inquisitor Captain basically just plays around that, which is why I went for it. Obviously, it's much more mana efficient to go for Inquisitor Captain, but Lieutenant is the main card we would want to hit off it anyway, so I'd rather just go for that and then play around Anger of the Gods or Brotherhood's End. Yeah, okay, sweet, we got there, nice. Okay, so we're going second here. And I think we can keep this. We got Hopeful Initiate on 1. we haven't got a 2-drop, but we could potentially draw one, and we've got a lot of good 3-drops. Getting Crucias down on 3 is really important, and then if we can get the 4th land for Inquisitor Captain, that'll be sick. Oh, okay. So we're against Mono Green Devotion. They have Leyline into Llanowar, so this is going to be really tough. I think Mono Green Devotion is probably the worst matchup game 1 from my experience. Particularly if they have Leyline into Elf, right? We don't really have any way to stop that, so assuming they've got a payoff here, I think we're in trouble. Okay, so Leyline of Abundance is their only payoff so far. Might mean that we have a chance here. Going to attack with the Hopeful Initiate just to get in for some damage while we can. But yeah, if they have like a Khan or Storm the Festival or Cavalier, we're probably in trouble here. Okay, they have a Cavalier. Not as bad as Khan or... Oh, they milled over a Storm the Festival. That kind of sucks. Okay, they got an Overgrown Tomb, so I assume that's for the Cauldron combo. Okay, they're attacking with the Llanowar Elves. Well, definitely going to go for Crucias here. And, there's always a chance they could whiff on the Storm the Festival. So I'm going to keep playing, even though we're pretty far behind. And then, if Crucias can start snowballing the game, we've actually got... a shout here, potentially. Okay, so they play Elvish Mystic for extra devotion. And then Storm the Festival. So we're hoping to dodge... Okay, I was going to say Khan and Nissa. And I guess, Kiora when they're getting 5 power creatures in play is rough. Oh, well, they milled another Storm the Festival and a Nykthos. Okay, so they get to Storm the Festival again here, which is pretty rough. So, yeah, this is going to be very tough to win. If they completely whiff on this Storm the Festival, we have like an outside chance, but they're already getting close to 7 lands for the Topiary Stomper. Wow, they hit Cavalier and the Nykthos again. So, and they milled another Storm the Festival. Yeah, okay. So this definitely isn't going our way. They get to cast Storm the Festival again here, and they have like 12 extra mana to pump into the ley lines as well. Okay, they hit a Cure. Yeah, we're just going to scoop it up. So that was obviously an insane start from the opponent. And we don't really have good ways to interact game 1. But post-sideboard, it should be a lot better. We've got Portable Hole here for Llanowar Elves and Elvish Mystic. We've got Brave the Elements for, to just be able to attack through. Crucias is probably too slow. We just need to race as fast as we can. And also, Crucias is a bit awkward with Brave the Elements as well. So we're basically just trying to race and force damage through with Brave the Elements. Going to trim on a Thalia here, even though it's quite useful. You don't want hands with multiple Thalias and, having to legend draw yourself. And then I think the last cut, we probably don't need Dauntless Bodyguard off Ranger Captain, but we do want to curve out as fast as possible. Like I said, this is a pure race, so I think we want as many 1-drops as possible. So I think I'm just going to trim on the Ranger Captain here and just run it back like that. But yeah, this is definitely a matchup where game 1 you're very unfavoured. Post-sideboard is a lot closer. It's definitely going to go on the play here. Okay, we've got the Brave the Elements and we've got Bodyguard into a 2-drop. So as long as we can keep drawing lands, this has definitely got a good shout of racing the opponent. Now, it's a bit odd we don't have Portable Hole, but we are on the play. We've got Juggernaut Peddler, which kind of acts as like a Thoughtseize for their early plays. So I think I'm pretty happy with this. Okay, Lieutenant's nice. We would have liked to land, but going to attack with the Bodyguard first before playing the Peddler, just so they have less information. They might be willing to offer the trade. I doubt it, though. Then we'll go for Peddler here, see what they got going on. Okay. I think we're just going to take the Khan here. So they've got Paradise Druid and Kiora, but, assuming we draw a land, we can go Kudro. Even if we don't, we can go Lieutenant. So, yeah, I think the game plan here is to just keep going face and then hopefully force the last few points of damage through with Brave the Elements. Okay, so opponent goes for Kiora. I think we're just going to ignore that. We just need to get in for as much damage as we can now and then hopefully get to a point where Brave the Elements just forces through the final points of damage. So we'll go for Kudro here and then just go face, I think, with the Bodyguard and the Peddler. Get in for 6. So puts them down for 12. And the thing is with Devotion is, they spend a few turns setting up, and they're very good at building a big board. So the whole game plan here is to just try and get them down to a low enough life total where Brave the Elements can just finish them off. Okay, so Juggernaut, we're not too bothered about. Obviously, it is a bit annoying that they get to draw a card off the Kiora, but for the most part, we can just ignore that. We can attack with the Peddler and the Bodyguard and not really lose too much. Okay, hitting Lieutenant off the Inquisitor Captain is sick here. I don't think I want to attack with the Kudro because that does represent a lot of power that we can get off our attack next turn, and I imagine, or I'm hoping that we can just go Brave the Elements for the win next turn. I assume they block with the Juggernaut here, yeah. So put them down to 8. So even if they build up a wide board here, we should just be able to win with Brave the Elements next turn, especially because we've got this Thalia's Lieutenant in hand. So yeah, like I said, this matchup is all about racing. Crucias is just too slow, like I said, and also doesn't really work with Brave the Elements, which is one of the most important cards in this matchup. So opponent just plays some blockers. I mean, again, that shouldn't matter because you've got Brave the Elements. Okay, Portable Hole's a little bit late, but shouldn't really matter. Anyway, just play the Thalia's Lieutenant. Oh, and they scoop it up. I mean, I'm happy about that because they didn't even see Brave the Elements. I mean, not that they have much sideboard stuff they can do to play around it anyway, but the fact they don't know about Brave the Element might mean that they don't play around it in Game 3, which is, you know, potentially important. So, let's see here. Again, you know, this matchup definitely isn't, like, massively favoured post-sideboard, but we have a lot of really good tools. So this hand's a little bit awkward with double Thalia, but 2 Portable Holes will guarantee that we can take out Llanowar Elves at Elvish Mystic, which should slow them down a significant amount, I think. So we'll see what they have here. Okay, they do have the Tumon Elf, so very glad we got the Portable Holes here. Okay, Esper Sentinel's not bad either. You know, they do a lot of their fast starts do revolve around Karn and Kiora. I mean, it'll be a bit annoying if they have Old Growth Troll, but we'll see how things pan out. So I definitely think we're going to play Thalia here just to stop them playing Kiora, stop them playing, you know, Abundant Harvest, which we just saw. Okay, they do have Paradise Druid, which can't be hit by Portable Hole. I think we're just going to go for Kudro here, though. Just maximise our mana and maximise our damage as well. So we get to get in for 3 with the Thalia here. And Thalia also stops them playing Karn now as well, which is definitely relevant. Okay, so they've got 3 mana here. What else have they got? Okay, they Legend Rule the Nykthos. I mean, that's probably a good sign. Probably means they don't have another land in hand. Okay, and they play Kiora. So this enables us to Portable Hold the Paradise Druid, which is pretty huge. And they're stuck on 2 lands still, so I think things are looking pretty good for us here. So I'm going to lead on the Portable Hold on the Paradise Druid, and then we can play the Esper Sentinel, which should hopefully draw us more cards. Oh, well, they just scoop it up. I mean, that's the thing. Mono Green is pretty inconsistent. You are just going to beat hands like that a lot of the time if you have interaction for their turn 1 elf. But yeah, we got there. Nice. Okay, so we're going first here. And I mean, this is a bit of an awkward hand because we don't have black on turn 2 for Juggernaut Peddler, and Giant Killer really isn't the best play on turn 1, but I think we've got a lot of good draws. You know, if we draw black mana in time, Peddler on 2 is great. There's a lot of other good 2-drops that we can draw as well, so. And against the Gigantha deck, you know, presumably that's probably Wizards. And Giant Killer isn't that great against Wizards anyway, so yeah, okay. So it looks like we are against Wizards if I had to guess. Okay, sick. We did draw the Black Source, which is nice. So we can attack with Giant Killer and then play Juggernaut Peddler on 2, which does allow us to hit one of their 2-drop creatures. I assume if they had a 1-drop creature, they would have played it already. So hopefully we get to tag like an Arcanist or a Balmor or something here. So we'll see what's going on there. Okay, they do have Arcanist and Balmor. I think, especially when they have Reckless Charge in hand, Arcanist is the most problematic card. Balmor generally not as good if it's the only creature they have, so get rid of the Arcanist, and they fire off Consider. And I assume they'll just play the Balmor next turn. Okay, they play Den. Yeah, they play the Balmor, sure. So I think, just to be mana efficient, we're going to go for Ranger Captain here. Oh wait, I guess, actually, I probably should have attacked with the Juggernaut Peddler first with open mana. And I think it's early enough in the game where Sentinel's still going to be pretty impactful. Going to attack with the Peddler anyway, but yeah, I should have attacked with the Peddler before playing the Ranger Captain, because then there's a chance the opponent might not block. They might think we have a combat trick or something. So yeah, that was a slight misplay on my part. So I guess just mis-sequence more than anything else. Okay, they strangle the Ranger Captain. We can sack in response, which does prevent them from playing stuff like Reckless Charge. So it does slow them down a little bit, which is nice. Although, to be honest, you know, I think the opponent would have played Reckless Charge first if they were planning to do that. Ooh, okay, Thalia's nice. So I think I'm going to lead on the Sentinel here and then play Thalia. You know, we could have gone for Thalia plus Lieutenant, but, you know, Sentinel and Thalia are cards that you want to get into play as early as possible. They're like, you know, the earlier you get them down, the more impact they're going to have. And it's kind of nice to get Sentinel in play before we play Lieutenant as well, because then we can obviously buff the Sentinel, which makes it even more difficult for the opponent to play around. Okay, they do have another Arcanist, which is a bit of an issue. Oh, okay. Apparition is a great draw. So I think even with a Thalia in play, I'm kind of scared enough of Arcanist that I'm just going to go for the Apparition before the Lieutenant. And it's slightly more mana efficient as well. Can only attack with the Peddler here. Again, they're probably just going to block, but, you know, Wizards have the capability of having some crazy turns. Even though we have Thalia in play, I think that's worth doing. Okay, they go for Iteration, and they give us a card off the Sentinel. Interesting. So, I mean, they've only got enough mana. They need an untapped land, and they can only cast a 1-mana spell, so... they hit Wizard's Lightning. So if they have an untapped land here, which I assume they do because we've seen they had quite a few lands from the Peddler. So I assume they just use Wizard's Lightning on the Thalia now. Yeah, so that does unlock quite a lot of mana, and they do get to attack him for 3 here. Thankfully, we have the Lieutenant, which does increase our clock by a fair amount. And we have the Ranger Captain here, which we can potentially sack. So, just trying to think what order. Maybe I did that too quickly. I think I'm going to grab Bodyguard here. But yeah, if I'm planning to sack the Ranger Captain, I should have played the Lieutenant first. But I'm not really sure I want to here, you know. I think, you know, they could very well deal 13 damage in one turn, but it's pretty unlikely. Yeah, and I think it would have just been a waste to sack the Ranger Captain there. So they do just play the Juggernaut, which really isn't an issue here. You know, that's just a blocker. Okay, they play Soulscar Mage. See if they attack with the Balmor here. No, okay, they've stopped attacking, which is really good news for us. Okay, Crucias is nice. Just trying to think what we want to protect with the Bodyguard here. We could also use Giant Killer Mana to tap down the Juggernaut, which then forces them to, you know, kind of forces them to block with the Soulscar Mage or the Balmor. Going to lead on the Bodyguard here. Okay, so it does look like the opponent does have something instant speed here. You know, that was partially so I could protect something, partially so I could check if Arena gave the opponent priority or not. So there's multiple options we could protect here. We could protect Sentinel, we could protect the Lieutenant. We could potentially protect the Apparition to stop them getting another blocker if they are holding onto an unholy, like a burn spell. Tough choice here. I'm trying to think, you know, protecting Sentinel's nice. Protecting Lieutenant is going to keep growing over the course of the game. So I think I'm going to protect the Lieutenant here, but I could see an argument for protecting the Sentinel. I could see an argument for protecting the Apparition as well. And I think I'm just going to go for Ranger Captain. Now, again, we could have used the Giant Killer to tap down the Juggernaut, but, you know, I think we have so much pressure on board here. And I do want to activate the Ranger Captain during the opponent's upkeep. So getting a second one in play should help a lot here. You know, because we know that one of their cards in their hand is Reckless Charge, which is a sorcery. So Ranger Captain is guaranteed to shut that off. It's not like we're guessing. And now, I think even if they do block with Juggernaut, they're kind of forced to block with the Lieutenant. To block with one of their other creatures as well, which should slow down their ability to kill us. So, I mean, the thing I am scared about is if their last card is a Wizard's Lightning or a Play with Fire or something. So I do need to be considerate of that when I'm planning out my attacks. You know, I don't want to get blown out here. The fact they're tanking when Thalia's Lieutenant is about to go out of range of Wizard's Lightning makes me think it's probably Wizard's Lightning. You know, they're pausing here where Thalia's Lieutenant's about to become a 4/4. So if I had to guess, I'd probably say the last card in their hand was Wizard's Lightning. Okay, they let it through. So I think I'm just going to attack with these 3. We could have attacked with everything, but I feel like this forces them to block with at least one of their other creatures anyway. Oh, it was just to consider. Okay, so we probably could have attacked with more stuff there. I did get the read slightly wrong on that, but I'm hoping it shouldn't matter. You know, even if they block with the Juggernaut, they're still dead. They still have to block with something else as well. Maybe it was better to attack with everything. But again, if their last card was Wizard's Lightning and they killed the Apparition, that could make things slightly awkward. And either way, you know, like I said, they're forced to block with something else here. I mean, to be honest, if their last card was Wizard's Lightning, they could have Wizard's Lightning the Juggernaut Peddler and then not had to block with anything else. But we're sacking Ranger Captain during their upkeep anyway, which should stop them being able to kill us on the backswing anyway. So I don't think it really matters overall. So we'll pass and we'll just crack the Ranger Captain during their upkeep. Now they can't activate the Reckless Charge. Yeah, okay, sweet, we got there, nice. So, game one against Wizards is really nice. Post-sideboard improves, definitely, because we have Portable Hull and Skyclave Apparition, which is really nice. Juggernaut Peddler, not very impactful here. And then I think we can trim on Ranger Captains. You know, we don't want to have too many 3-drops if we're bringing in Apparition, because the curve's slightly too high as well. Could see Recruitment Officer being too slow and wanting to keep in the 3rd Ranger Captain, though. I think I'm happy with that. You know, especially because we're boarding in 4 portable holes, so it's not like we're going to be short of stuff to play on the 1 mana slot. And this isn't the sort of matchup where we'd ever really want to be grabbing Recruitment Officer off the Ranger Captain. And we're trimming on Ranger Captain anyway, so that's going to come up slightly less often anyway. But yeah, overall, you know, it's great to get game 1 against Wizards because I do feel like post-sideboard the matchup gets better for us. Okay, so this sounds a little bit land heavy, but Sentinel on turn 1 is very annoying for their deck to deal with. See what they lead on here. They do have turn 1 Symmetry Sage, which is scary, and we really didn't want to see that extra land. I mean, thankfully we have Crucias, which is good if we are flooding out, but they also have Wizard's Lightning, so... Oh wow, we get to draw off the Sentinel straight away, so maybe they kept a 1-lander potentially? And Sentinel is perfect at punishing those sorts of hands. Okay, looks like they did. Yeah, okay, sick. So that's good news for us. I mean, having said that, I'm still not, you know... Wizards is very capable of winning on 1 or 2 land hands if they have, you know, Reckless Charge on Symmetry Sage, for example. So, okay, there's Arcanist. That's kind of scary as well. Okay, Apparition is perfect here. So now we can Apparition the Arcanist and then attack for 1 here. So that was a good draw. I mean, having said that, the other alternative is, you know, playing Crucias, which is also really strong on turn 3, but... letting them untap with Arcanist is generally not a good idea. Now, the other downside here is that we don't have many flyers or like blockers in the air. So, unlike Thalia, which basically doesn't give them an option, you know, they have to pay extra for everything. The fact that Esper Sentinel gives the opponent an option does sometimes mean that they can just force lethal through and give us a bunch of cards. Yeah, okay, so this is the sort of draw I'm talking about where they're putting us down to 8 here. And, you know, they could very well go double Reckless Charge next turn to just win. Thankfully, we have Kudro that can get rid of the Reckless Charge in the graveyard and buff the Sentinels, so we should be drawing a lot of cards here. Hopefully, we can draw into a Portable Hull or Apparition to deal with the Symmetry Sage, but this is the downside of Sentinel over Thalia, where sometimes they can just ignore it. Yeah, this is exactly the sort of scenario I'm talking about, where... if they have, you know, if they have an extra mana, they can just cast this Reckless Charge from the graveyard and win. Okay, play with fire, so... are we going to survive at 1 here? Oh no, that's just lethal, I can't count. Whoops. For some reason I thought I was at 1 life higher. Yeah, okay, so that kind of sucked. And that does show that even if they keep a 1-lander and we draw a ton of cards off Sentinel, it's not guaranteed to win us the game. But I don't think we could have really done much there. You know, we've got 4 Portable Hull, we've got 4 Apparition. They just happened to draw more creatures than we had answers for there, unfortunately. But going into game 3, you know, I think play draw is also pretty important in this matchup as well. And going into game 3 on the play should hopefully improve our chances. This is kind of an awkward hand. I could maybe see an argument to keeping it, but... oh, wow. I hate keeping 1-landers, but I think this is a 1-lander where we can actually justify it. Maybe that was greedy putting back the... you know, not putting back the Apparition when we have to name human on the only land that we've got, but... you know, I'm really hoping they give us a card draw or we draw another land. Okay, perfect. So now we have 3 Sentinels. So it's going to be almost impossible for the opponent to not give us extra cards here. And the fact that the land we drew is white also means that if we draw another white land, we can cast the Apparition. Okay, so they don't give us a card straight away. But yeah, I mean, we are running 24 lands, so... Oh, well, Thalia's a great draw. If we're not going to draw a land, Thalia's the best card we can draw there. But yeah, we are drawing 24 lands, so the chances of us drawing a second land on curve aren't that low. And a hand with triple Sentinel is like the only one lander that I would really consider keeping, especially, you know, because we're down to 6 cards. Okay, so they strangle the Thalia, but that does draw us 2 off the Sentinel. Okay, there's the third land. Okay, drawing another fast land is a little bit annoying. Oh, wow. Okay, so they give us 3 cards off that. So that must mean they have like a burn spell, like a Wizard's Lightning or something here, yeah. Or I guess they could have had a Reckless Charge as well, so... I think we just have to let this through because we do have the Apparition for the Belmore. It doesn't really make sense to block with the Esper Sentinel here, but... We're still in a pretty precarious situation. I mean, thankfully they can't give trample to their creatures anymore. I'm not going to get too greedy with attacks here because we're definitely on the back foot. I think I can afford to attack with 2 Sentinels because if they have a burn spell for the Apparition, we can still block with the Sentinel here, which I think is important. Maybe it is greedy to attack with the second Sentinel, thinking about it, because... You know, I don't think that 1 damage is really going to make a big difference over the course of the game. And if they have 2 burn spells, they could potentially go take out the Apparition, take out the Sentinel and attack. But looks like they're just going face with the burn spells, which is also, you know, completely makes sense. So here we definitely don't want to give them a creature because it gives them a target for stuff like Reckless Charge. We have the Apparition in hand to be able to kill the Soulscar Mage. So I think we're just going to block with the Esper Sentinel and then just go with Apparition next turn. But yeah, I mean... Things are looking very precarious here because if they have 2 Wizard's Lightnings, if they have another Static Discharge and a Play with Fire, we're in real trouble here, so yikes, okay. So they have Wizard's Lightning, we are drawing a lot of cards, so we need to try and turn the corner as quickly as we possibly can here. Maybe it's even correct to ignore the Soulscar Mage and just, you know, try and block stuff, but we're going to play the Giant Killer out here, and we have double Thalia's Lieutenant available for next turn. But yeah, we're dead to Static Discharge, we're dead to Wizard's Lightning, we're dead to 2 Play with Fires, so we have to try and turn the corner as quickly as possible here. So they don't put Gigantha into hand, which makes me think, I mean, maybe they have a Play with Fire. If they had a Wizard's Lightning or a Static Discharge, they'd have obviously gone face. Maybe it could be a conditional removal spell, like that only targets creatures, maybe? Or maybe it's just a Consider, but I feel like if they had Consider, they would have played it during their turn, potentially to try and find a Wizard's Lightning. Either way, we're going to Apparition again to get rid of the Soulscar Mage, and then go for Thalia's Lieutenant here. So it looks like our opponent's thinking about something. If it's a Play with Fire, that's going to be rough, because then they get to scry towards a burn spell. Ah, okay, it was an Abrade, sure, that makes sense. So we do get to draw an additional card here, and they do get a 2/2 blocker, but we are going to start threatening lethal fairly soon. I think we can afford to attack with everything here, because we're getting in for 8. They choose not to block, so they're down to 6, so they should be dead next turn. It's going to come down to this draw step. Did they draw a 3 damage burn spell or not? Oh wow, okay, that was really close. We got there though, nice. Okay, so we're on the play here. And I mean, nothing before turn 3 is a bit sketchy. If we were on the draw, this would be a mulligan straight away, but I don't know. I'm kind of tempted to keep this. This is so close. I think I'm going to keep it because we have a lot of 1 and 2 drops that we can potentially draw in the first 2 turns, and we've got a lot of good top ends if we end up drawing lands instead. So I'm going to risk this. You know, like I said, if I was going second, this would be a mulligan for sure, but you know, I think it's worth keeping on the play and seeing how it plays out. Hard Evidence. Okay, so against Creativity. Okay, sick. We drew a 2-drop, and Thalia is very, very good against the Creativity deck, so that's great to see. Then we can go for Ranger Captain on turn 3, unless we draw like a Crucias or something. So Creativity is an interesting matchup. I feel like it should definitely be good because not only do we have Esper Sentinel Thalia, but we also have Juggernaut Peddler, which should be really good as well. I'm going to attack before playing the Ranger Captain because there's a chance the opponent thinks we have a combat trick, which they do. They let the 2 damage through, which is obviously great. Then we can just play the Ranger Captain here. Okay, that resolves as well. And then what do we want to grab here? Dauntless Bodyguard is pretty appealing. Hopeful Initiate could kill artifacts at instant speed, which might help against creativity, but that's so-so. So I think it's probably between Esper Sentinel and Bodyguard here. I think it's early enough in the game where Sentinel should be impactful, but particularly against what I assume... Well, it's either going to be Izzet or Jeskai with a light white splash from lists I've seen. So I like going for Bodyguard here because it enables us to play around stuff like Brotherhood's End or Supreme Verdict if they have that. Okay, they just play a land and looks like they're passing here. Okay, sure. So gonna shock in the lands here, and again I'm going to attack before playing anything just in case they think we have a combat trick again. Looks like they have a removal spell. So 2 mana removal spell. Okay, yeah, 5 Prophecy makes sense. So we're definitely going to sack in response so that they don't get to put a card back or draw. So, and they don't block again, which is great. And I think we want to use the Bodyguard to protect the Thalia here, because Thalia making creativity cost 1 more is really huge. Thalia making their sweepers cost 1 more is huge as well. And then I think I'm just going to get Giant Killer here. You know, I wasn't really considering Giant Killer off the first Ranger Captain because I knew we had the second one in hand, but if they're playing Serra's Emissary as their creativity target, Giant Killer is really important to have as a way to kill it, because if they creativity for X equals 1, even if they know we have the Giant Killer, they kind of have to name instant, which then enables us to just potentially attack around it. And yeah, either way, since we are against creativity, getting Giant Killer as an out to Emissary is very important. So definitely going to play the Captain here. Hopefully we get to hit a Juggernaut Peddler or... Okay, we hit a Crucias, which isn't too bad. Actually, Crucias is pretty sick, to be honest, because Skyclave Apparition is basically going to do nothing in this matchup, so getting to pitch that and get another Inquisitor Captain is really nice. And I'm going to set a stop during the upkeep so that we can sack the Ranger Captain here as well. And yeah, I wanted to play the Inquisitor Captain pre-combat just in case we hit a Kudro or a Thalia's Lieutenant. So we get another Inquisitor Captain. Going to sack the Ranger Captain here just in case they have like land into Supreme Verdict or Brotherhood's End, for example. You know, even though the opponent isn't dead on board, if we can hit a Thalia's Lieutenant, a Kudro, or even a Juggernaut Peddler off Inquisitor Captain next turn, I feel like that was worth cracking the Inquisitor Captain for. Cracking the Ranger Captain for, because, you know, if we hadn't cracked the Ranger Captain, we could have we could have had lethal this turn guaranteed, but there's a chance they just go land into creativity. There's a chance that they sweep the board, so this guarantees our chances of winning, I think. Okay, we would have liked to see Thalia's Lieutenant or Kudro, but Juggernaut Peddler here should be good at taking them off creativity, hopefully, if they have got it in hand. So they're obviously thinking about something here. So there must be something at instant speed that they're worried about us taking. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see what they play. I assume, since they missed the land drop, they must have just a stacked hand full of spells, which is kind of concerning. But yeah, we'll see what they do here. Okay, the Prosmari command the Dauntless Bodyguard, which could be an issue if they have a sweeper. But I guess, you know, with the Peddler we could take a sweeper. They don't have a sweeper. They got 2 emissaries. I mean, I think we just take the creativity here, right? You know, Fragment Reality can take out one of our biggest creatures, but we've still got Thalia in play and they don't have a sweeper. Things would have been a bit awkward had they had both a sweeper and a creativity, but thankfully they just had a creativity, so I think we should just be good here. And I don't want to play the land. We can cash in the land for a better card with the Crucias here. So Crucias put in work this game, you know, just helping us find impactful spells every single turn. Peddler is obviously really good here as well. Okay, yeah, opponent just scoops it up. So Thalia also probably pulled the most weight in that game. So here, interesting what we want to have as the last spell, because normally against control I just cut Apparition for Wedding Announcement, which I could see doing here, to be honest. Because Apparition, you know, all this stuff they're going to be making is tokens, which Apparition can't hit. So I think Wedding Announcement's good. You know, the only other card I'm considering here is Brave the Elements. as just a way to protect our, or portable hull's also a consideration because you can use it to take out the tokens that they make, whether that's artifact or creature tokens. And like I said, Brave the Elements can protect from removal, but I think I prefer Wedding Announcement as just a threat. I think we want to be as proactive as possible in this matchup. Now, the fact that they're on Emissary is a bit of a concern, because if they ever creativity for X equals 2, 1 on creature, 1 on instant, we can't win, but our deck is so well set up against this sort of deck. Not only are we good against controlling decks in general, but we're also good against combo because of Juggernaut Peddler, so I think this should be a pretty good matchup for us overall. Okay, they shocked in the Hallowed Fountain, so they must have Fragment Reality. That's the only card that makes sense. If they didn't do anything at the end of my turn anyway, so good to know they have Fragment Reality. If they had Consider or something, they would have definitely cast it already. Okay, we get to resolve the Thalia here, which is huge. And they can't cast Fragment Reality on it either because they don't have 2 mana available. Plus, if they Fragment Reality Thalia, there's a good chance that we just get an Esper Sentinel instead, so interesting. Now, I normally just slam Crucias on turn 3, but Esper Sentinel into Thalia's Lieutenant is pretty good. Like I've said multiple times, getting Esper Sentinel down as early as possible is really good because it has much more of an impact earlier in the game when it forces the opponent to play off curve. So even though they do kill the Thalia and they get to kind of loot off the Fire Prophecy, getting Sentinel into Thalia's Lieutenant down here is pretty good. So we'll see what the opponent has here. What are we worried about? Obviously board sweepers are a concern. But we should at least be drawing 1 card off Esper Sentinel if they do have a board sweeper. And we have Kudro to apply pressure. We have Crucias that, is also good at refueling if the opponent does have a board sweeper. So not 100% sure which I'm going to play next turn. I think potentially Kudro just to present a faster clock, and because Crucias is better at recovering if they do have a sweeper. But I'm not 100% sure. I think it'll largely depend on what I draw for the turn. Okay, there's the 4th land. They just pass with mana open. Okay, interesting. So I think I can afford to shock this Godless Shrine in. I don't want to get hit by Censor or Dry Disruption. Since I drew the 2nd Kudro, I'm actually going to go for the Crucias here, because we can then pitch the Kudro to try and find an Inquisitor Captain. It's close though. I could very much see going for Kudro just for extra damage and then holding on to the Crucias as a way to recover from a sweeper. But okay, opponent goes for Fragment Reality, which makes me think they might not have a sweeper. I guess they could do that to try and deny us a card, but I'm quite happy doing this because we drew the 2nd Kudro. So now, even if the opponent does have a sweeper, we have Inquisitor Captain and Kudro to recover the following turn, which is a pretty sick way to recover from a sweeper, to be honest. But, we don't have good ways to stop creativity now, so if they somehow manage to create 2 tokens, then they can just go for creativity next turn. We do have Inquisitor Captain that can find us Thalia, it can find us Juggernaut Peddler. Oh wow, we just drew Juggernaut Peddler. Okay, perfect. So now we're going to lead on that for sure. Even though Juggernaut Peddler isn't the best to play the turn before they're getting the loot off Fable, I still want to go for it here just in case they have creativity. Okay, they don't have creativity, but we can get rid of Wandering Emperor, which is nice. So yeah, it is slightly annoying that we didn't wait a turn to cast the Juggernaut Peddler, but I think the risk is too high if they have creativity in hand, just letting them go for it, especially because they can get Treasure Token off the 2/2. So we'll tap with both here, get Kudro in play. I didn't want to play the Godless Shrine because I want to discard it to the Crucias here. And we're getting a treasure off the Crucias anyway, so that kind of, works as an additional mana source in place of the land anyway. So we'll go to the end step, discard the Godless Shrine, and choose Ambitious here. See what we hit. Okay, Hopeful Initiate's interesting. That can kill the Reflection. We can just go cast Hopeful Initiate, activate it immediately if we wanted to kill the Reflection, because we've already got 3 counters on the Thalia's Lieutenant, which is pretty nice. I'm not sure how relevant that will be though, because the only thing that Reflection is likely to be copying in this deck is Serra's Emissary. So they could potentially creativity into Emissary, naming instant, and then make copies naming creature. Okay, so they discarded Fire Prophecy and Juggernaut. So, they could, if they draw creativity here, that's kind of rough, because if they go land creativity, they can go for X equals 2, which would basically just win them the game, but They'd have to get pretty lucky drawing creativity right away, I think. And we are representing a lot of damage here. You know, even if they block the Lieutenant, we're getting in for 11. If we find, you know, if we find Thalia's Lieutenant off the Inquisitor Captain, then that's lethal. What else could we find? Okay, they go for hard evidence, so that probably means they don't have creativity. Okay, and a land, so we know everything they've got here. They could draw cards off the clues, but either way, going to lead on the Inquisitor Captain here, and ideally we're looking for Thalia's Lieutenant. Another Juggernaut Peddler would be pretty nice, though. Although, having said that, we could just Juggernaut Peddler the Valakut Awakening, and I could draw creativity off the clues, which would be kind of rough, but we'll see what we hit here. I mean, that's a pretty bad hit, because we can't put Crucias in play because of the Legend rule, and Giant Killer, putting that into play, gets rid of one of our only outs to killing Serra's Emissary if they do hit it. But I still think it's worth going for, because we can potentially tap down a creature next turn, and we can go for Hopeful Initiate here as well. So we are still pretty vulnerable to sweepers here. But we do at least get to activate Crucias to replace this land with something better. Now, maybe it's a bit greedy to go for the Hopeful Initiate here, but I just want to make sure that if they don't draw a sweeper, no amount of single target removal is going to save them here. That's the goal anyway. I mean, maybe, yeah, thinking about it, it was probably actually pretty greedy to play the Hopeful Initiate there. I probably should have held on to that, because, well, we put them down to 1. Oh, we put them down to 2 here, my bad. So even if we don't play the Hopeful Initiate, we're almost guaranteed to win next turn anyway, unless the opponent has a sweeper. And if they do have a sweeper, it's better to have Hopeful Initiate in hand. So I think it was probably a misplay to play the Hopeful Initiate. Hopefully they don't draw a sweeper. I mean, even if they do have a sweeper, if they have a red damage based sweeper, we get to keep the Thalia's Lieutenant, which is pretty huge. But if they have a Supreme Verdict, we're only left with the Wedding Announcement, which could get there, you know, but yeah, thinking about it, I think we probably should have been better off not playing the Hopeful Initiate, but we'll see how it plays out here. Okay, another Fable. I mean, having said that, you know, between interaction and Fable tokens, they could have had enough blockers. Yeah, okay, no, they just keep it up though. We got there, nice.